Okay, we're going to start now, as we normally do, with reciting the Namo Tassa 3 times for those who like to join in that. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. So I'd like to welcome all of you to this Sutta study class tonight. And this evening, we're going to be covering a few different suttas, fairly short suttas in the Samyutta Nikaya, dealing with the 5 aggregates, and especially on how to regard the 5 aggregates and to reflect on them in our meditation, because as we've learned before, and most of you know, the 5 aggregates really are the central focus of the Buddhist teaching, and especially on the nature of suffering and the nature of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. So at the end of the definition of suffering, the Buddha said, in short, these 5 aggregates of clinging are suffering. So these are some suttas that probably a lot of people may not have seen or heard in or read in some of the the popular books. So I wanted to go over some of them because again, it explains the Buddha's own words and how he was, how he was explaining them and understood them according to his deep wisdom. So this first one is in the, these are in the Samyutta Nikaya, in the Khandavagga. If any of you have the book, the Bhikkhu Bodhi's wisdom publication book, the Samyutta Nikaya, this starts on page 895. I don't know if Prashant was going to try to get that up on the shared screen or not. But,
no, sorry, Bhante. Yeah, I cannot. I have the e-publication copy, but it cannot show the page numbers. I cannot follow on the page number.
Okay, yeah, I know it is difficult the way they're numbered, because different books are numbered different ways. So the Buddha gave this discourse to the monks in Savatthi, and he said, because there are these 5 aggregates subject to clinging. What 5? The form aggregate subject to clinging, the feeling aggregate subject to clinging, the perception aggregate subject to clinging, the volitional formations aggregate subject to clinging, and the consciousness aggregate subject to clinging. It means it's these 5 aggregates that we cling to and identify as being I, me, and mine, and what we develop our attachments and desires or our aversions and hatred toward them. And the whole life basically revolves around them. And said, so long as I did not directly know as they really are, these 5 aggregates of clinging, I did not claim to have awakened to the unsurpassed perfect enlightenment. But when I directly knew all of this as it really is, then I claim to have awakened to the unsurpassed perfect enlightenment. And how monks are there the four phases? So he's talking about the four phases. Basically, it means that he directly knew the material form. That's the one. He directly knew its origin. He directly knew how it ceases. And he directly knew the way leading to the cessation of form. And he repeats the same thing for all the other four aggregates. He directly knew feeling, he directly knew perception, he directly knew volitional formations, he directly knew consciousness, their origin, their cessation, and the way leading to the cessation. So basically, this is the standard formulation for even the Four Noble Truths. We understood suffering, the origin of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the path leading to the cessation of suffering. And what is this he directly knew? He directly knew form and the rest of the aggregates. And it means he knew it through insight, through the direct penetration and insight through the deep levels of meditation. So it's not just intellectually knowing, it's directly knowing, and by direct knowledge, penetrative knowledge. And then he goes on and says, what is form? The four great elements and all the material qualities and forms derived from the four elements. That means the earth element, water element, fire element, air element, basically the material body, and then all of its subtler components, the sense bases, the sense organs, the sense bases, and also it means also the color, sound, smell, taste, tactile sensation, and basically it means any material object in the world, whether it's in this body or it's in the external world, the standard material things that are in the world. And this is what is, with the arising of nutriment, there's the arising of these form, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness. And the nutriments are the material food, which is the nutriment to feed the cells of this body and other things. You have to water plants, or they'll grow, or fertilize them, and animals have to eat food that grows the physical body. And contact, volition, and consciousness are the food for our mind, which grow the mind. We talked about that already in one of the previous talks. And it says, whatever ascetics and Brahmins, having thus directly known form, its origin, cessation, and the way leading to the cessation, they are practicing for the purpose of the disenchantment and revulsion towards them, for its fading away and cessation. Now he uses the word or revulsion, but of course that's the English translation for the Pali word. I can't tell you at the moment the Pali word, but the revulsion means, to see its detrimental effects of the clinging, basically, and how these forms are basically kind of illusions, and that they're subject to decay and change, and then we lose they become ugly and smelly and so on. So they get develop this revulsion, which means detachment. It's better to say just dispassion and detachment for them, for being attached to them. And so he goes through all those 5 aggregates, and with the arising of contact, there's the arising of feeling and perceptions and volitions and consciousness. So it takes the contact of the mind with this, when the senses are impacted, then that contact, which is called the triple conjunction, where the sense object and the sense organ come together, and the consciousness also comes together at that same time. Whenever we hear a sound, and the ear is working and the sound is there and our attention is there, then we become conscious, and that's the arising of the sound. So with the rising of the contact, and then because of that, you got the feeling arises, the perception, and then the volitional formations in consciousness. So there's one important part. So whoever has directly seen these 5 aggregates, basically that means attaining the stream entry, having directly developed that deep insight into anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Then that's the directly seeing, and they've gained a foothold in this Dhamma in discipline. So it takes that initial direct seeing of these 5 aggregates, seeing them as impermanent, and especially as no self, that we'll talk about later, and attain the stream entry where they have overcome doubts and the personality belief. They've gained a foothold in the Dhamma, and then they have to continue to develop the disenchantment and the detachment from these 5 aggregates in order to attain the succeeding stages of the once returning, never returning, in the Arhat stage. But it takes that disenchantment and revulsion to detachment from them and the infatuation with them to reach the full cessation of the suffering. Now, so that's the first of those suttas, and the second one, the next one we're going to cover. The title of it is called "The 7 Cases and the Triple Investigation." So it's similar, a lot of it is similar to the previous sutta, but specifically it deals with understanding the 3 extra ones. So it says, a monk who is skilled in 7 cases and a triple investigator is called in this Dhamma and discipline one who has fully lived the holy life, the highest kind of persons. That means a person who's attained full enlightenment. And how monks is one skilled in the 7 cases. So the first 4 of these are the same as we've already read. He understands form, its origin, its cessation, and the way leading to the cessation of form. But then he adds 3 extra ones, and this is important. He understands the gratification and the danger and the escape in the case of form. And in the same way, he understands the gratification, the danger, and the escape in the case of 4 feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, and consciousness. And so it's the way he describes these, what is the gratification and the danger and the escape is part of the reflection in the practice of understanding these. And so he's talking about the gratification of these 5 aggregates. The pleasure and joy that arise in dependence on form, this is the gratification of form. And whatever is impermanent, suffering, and subject to change, this is the danger in form. And the removal and abandonment of desire and lust for form, this is the escape from form. So this, the meaning of this is, as long as we feel that we're being gratified by, let's say, what we see, we like to see pleasant objects and smells and tastes and body feelings, and even our mental states, and we get gratification from that. We get pleasure and joy from that, and that is why people get attached to them. And what is the danger in the feeling? Whatever is the change and becoming otherwise and disappearance of the form, that is the danger. That means like our body. We might be healthy, and then all of a sudden we get, sick, get a disease. That's the danger in form. So that's the way we have to. This is it's telling us to see it this way. Even though we crave the body and we like the body, there are these inherent dangers in the body in terms of it's subject to getting sick, breaking the bones, so many types of injuries and pain, and old age and death. So that is the danger in the form, as well as in the feeling too. We get gratification and pleasant feelings, but these pleasant feelings can change and they can become painful feelings because they're not under our control. So that's the danger in the feelings, as well as the perceptions and the volitional formations and even our consciousness. As long as we're getting joy and desire and gratification from these objects, because they do bring joy and gratification on the relative level. So the Buddha grants that, they do. But at the same time, their opposite side is they're also subject to, the pain and suffering that also comes with them when these things change. And so understanding that, both understanding the gratification in them and the danger, it's the danger in being attached to them, because when they do change, that's when we suffer. And then what is the escape? The escape in regards to form, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness is the abandoning that attachment and lust for them. And we do that through the contemplation, through the practice of meditation, through the practice of investigation and understanding them in terms of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. That's when we start developing that, the ability to, what it means escape from that is, it means not being affected by it. So it's not that you're actually escaping necessarily, but in some cases, yes, you stop going towards those objects if they caused you pain. And so whenever you overcome your desire or attachment to an object, then you're not going to go chasing after that. So on one level, that's the escape. But as we'll see later, the deepest level of escape is actually attaining the stages of liberation, where the mind is actually has been totally, that attachment and desire for them is totally kind of overcome as we reach this different levels of liberation. So whatever meditators, ascetics, Brahmins, having directly known the gratification, having directly known the danger, and having directly known the escape in case of feeling, of form, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness, they are practicing for the detachment for these things, for their fading away, for the cessation. And they have gained a good foothold in this Dhamma and discipline. So that, all of those things are repeated over for all those, the different of the five aggregates. And then at the end, it says, how monks is a monk a triple investigator? Here a monk investigates by way of the elements, by way of the sense bases, and by way of dependent origination. It is in such a way that a monk is a triple investigator. And then to finish it, he says, monks, whoever is skilled in these 7 cases and a triple investigator is called in this Dhamma discipline one who has fully lived the holy life, the highest kind of person. So this triple investigation, basically, it means, the aspect of investigating the Dhamma, or in the 7 factors of enlightenment, investigation of Dhamma or Dhamma Vichaya is the second of those factors. After mindfulness, there's investigation. And investigation includes this applying the intellectual knowledge and the reflective knowledge towards these aggregates until finally getting the deep insights. So you reflect on how how form arises, how feeling arises. You investigate what are these elements, the four elements of earth, fire, water, air. What is this body made up of? And then the sense bases. You investigate them, like the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, and their respective objects, such as visible object, sound, flavor, odor, tactile sensation, and mental phenomena. And you understand, like according to dependent origination, because of you have the six senses and contact, then feeling arises. And then the craving. So you apply, so that requires you to, or assumes that you have, read or understood the paticca samuppada or dependent origination. And so you, investigate these senses, the four elements in the senses, and see how they arise and how they, what are the arising factors, how do they arise, what are the ceasing factors of them, and the way leading to their ceasing. And applying them in the dependent origination. So, because it's that investigation that helps you get quite concentrated and helps to put the mind on the right track to develop that detachment. Because if we don't investigate them and don't understand them, then we remain kind of trapped by them. We don't know how to disengage from our eye or the visible objects. We don't know how to disengage because we don't understand how they arose. But once you understand how they arose, then you can understand how to disengage from them and to detach from them. So that's why it's this way of investigating Dhamma. Basically, it's developing the Dhamma Vichaya. So both of those sutras were similar, except for the difference was that the second one we've just read was including and part of that investigation also includes understanding the gratification, the danger, and the escape from the being trapped by the aggregates. Because basically people are trapped by them. People are trapped in their thoughts. They're tormented by their thoughts. They don't know the escape from their thoughts. They don't know how they arise. They don't know the escape or the danger. So they go on, developing more and more and more and more thoughts, not understanding the danger and problems they're getting into and the escape from them, which is developing, the meditation and the Eightfold Path is really the escape from them, the way leading to the cessation of suffering. So understanding the gratification, the danger, and understanding how the mind can, detach and become free from their corrupting influence or their painful influence. And you can prevent the attachments from arising in the future toward anything that we happen to be attached to, whether it's food, music, things we see, hear, smell, taste, touch. We understand that all these things are just fleeting sensations and basically not under our control, and to develop that kind of understanding. So that's and then the triple investigation is investigating the gratification, the danger, and the escape. That's what it entails, the investigation of that. Because until one has really understood it, then the mind won't have the energy that's needed to detach from them and to sort of disassociate with them in order to experience the freedom of that. So we'll always be bugged and irritated by the various unpleasant sensations that are coming to us, and getting irritated by, the unpleasant smells and visible objects and sounds and other things that you come into contact with all the time. We're always clinging and identifying them as this is mine, this is myself, I, me, and mine. So, okay, now the next sutta that we want to go over is the Anatta-lakkhana Sutta. Now, you have that one, Prashant? Can you put that up on the screen?
Yes, Bhante.
Okay, so we hope the Anatta-lakkhana Sutta can be put up on the screen. And this is actually the second sermon that the Buddha gave after his enlightenment. And he gave it to those group of 5 monks that he had been meditating with before. So in our first sutta study class, we covered the first discourse of the Buddha, the first sermon, which was the turning the wheel of Dhamma, which he also taught to those first 4 monks, five monks. And at the end of that, turning the wheel of Dhamma, Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, one of them attained stream entry. So the Kondanya, just hearing that sermon by the Buddha, attained stream entry. So he had directly seen, he got that glimpse of Nibbana, of the unconditioned mind opening up and experiencing that dissolution of self-consciousness. And he, understood to that level of the stream enter's understanding. So that's, he directly saw it, but the others didn't yet. But in the second sermon, at the end of the second sermon, they all attained enlightenment, actually, it says. And also this sutta illustrates the Buddha's deductive reasoning. So the Buddha first tells them, monks, form is not self. For if monks' form were self, this form would not lead to affliction. And it would be possible to say, let my form be thus, let my form not be thus. But because form is not self, form leads to affliction. And it is not possible to say, let my form be thus, let my form not be thus. So basically he's talking about the body, and you can't tell your body to just change immediately. I want my body to be different. Although some people through surgeries and dyeing their hair and all kind of other things, they might be able to change something on their body, but normally it's not self, because you cannot just tell it how you want it to be. Like, don't get sick. You can't tell it to get sick. If conditions are there, it'll get sick. And it leads to affliction. So, and he goes on to say the same thing for feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, and consciousness. Because if any of these things were self, they would not lead to affliction, like painful feeling. You can't change a painful feeling into a pleasant feeling. And so the painful feeling, you suffer on account of it. And the pleasant feeling, it can't stay forever. You want it to stay, but it doesn't. So, and then he goes on to say, form, or he's asking the monks. So this is his deductive reasoning. What do you think, monks? Is form permanent or impermanent? He means, is this body subject to change, disease, and old age and death? And naturally they said, impermanent, Venerable Sir. And so they got him to admit it. So the Buddha got them to admit that the form was impermanent. And so he asked them a further question. Well, what is impermanent? Is that a source of suffering or happiness? What is impermanent? Is it suffering or happiness? And they said, suffering, Venerable Sir, because it wouldn't fit there if form was permanent. It wouldn't be a source of happiness, or if the form was what if it was impermanent? So they said the form is, because it's impermanent, it's suffering. So he got him to admit the second one. And then he asked him, what is impermanent, suffering, and subject to change? Is it fit to be regarded thus? Or is it right to say, this is mine, this I am, this is myself? And they said, no, Venerable Sir. So, he used his questioning to, paint them into a corner by agreeing that, the aggregates are impermanent, and being impermanent, are they pleasant or painful? Now, what is pleasant or painful? Is it regarded right to call that myself? Some people might say, yeah, it's okay. Well, that's not the way the Buddha sees it. Or because the self, you have to understand where this context came from. In modern day English and so on, people might not be able to understand this, but the term self meant something that was unchangeable. And it was something permanent. And of course, that was regarding to the soul and consciousness. But even so, to call it myself, we should be able to control it. So if you call something yourself, you should be able to control it. But this is pointing out that we cannot control it because it's subject to the law of conditions and the law of karma, and you can't control how long you're going to live, and you can't control what kind of sicknesses or diseases you're going to get, or what other types of experiences that you're going to have, whether you're going to, get beaten or robbed or murdered or killed in an accident. We don't know those things until they actually happen. And then we can't say these things shouldn't happen to me. So anyway, this is how the Buddha tried to get people to understand how not to regard, these body feelings, perceptions, volitions, and consciousness as being, this is mine, this is I, this is myself. So he goes on to say, so whatever kind of form, whether past, future, or present, whether gross or subtle, internal or external, inferior, superior, with right understanding, be regarded as this is not mine, this is not I, this is not my self. Because whenever we think about the past, we think about last week. Oh, last week I was in this state of health. Last week I had this kind of thing. Or last year, or when I was young, or in the future. You know, I want this to happen in the future. So we're identifying all these things, even the past, the present, and the future of all these aggregates. We're clinging to them with this this idea that they're mine and myself, and that we're somehow the owner or controller. Although we know we don't own or control them, but deep down we act as though we do. So, you know, any logical person knows they're not really ultimately the owner of these things, but they act like they were, or they act as though they were permanent. And then when they change, we get surprised. Or we, you know, these things belong to me. You know, you think even you're in relationships, you think, you know, the other person belongs to you, as it were. And then when they change, you get shocked. What? You know, the other said, I don't belong to you. What? So people live their life, even though they know these things, they don't own or control them. They act as they do. And then when they change, they get surprised, they get dejected, they get angry, and all kind of problems come. So this is what basically, you know, the Buddha wanted us to reflect on these. So, then down near the end, he says, seeing thus, monks, the instructed noble disciple experiences detachment or revulsion towards form. Revulsion, again, revulsion means basically detachment and, you know, letting go and sort of knowing that these things are not fit to bring any lasting kind of happiness. Experiencing revulsion, he becomes dispassionate. Through dispassion, the mind is liberated. When it is liberated, there comes the knowledge it is liberated. And what had to be done has been done. There is no more for this state of being. This is what the Blessed One said. Elated, those monks delighted in the Blessed One's statement. And while this discourse was being spoken, the minds of the monks of the group of 5 were liberated from the taints by non-clinging. So that means they all attained the final stage of enlightenment through hearing this Anatta-lakkhana Sutta. And so, you know, the contemplation of impermanence and suffering is just setting the groundwork for the real deeper insight into the non-self, or the emptiness of consciousness. And that basically means the sense of I or me that, you know, we believe is our mind. You know, this is my mind, I'm the owner of it, or my consciousness. And that's always there, but, you know, that is seen through. And, you know, you understand that basically it's an illusion, as we've already talked about on a number of occasions in other talks. So, you know, that's how important. And if really one understands, it's that all these 5 aggregates, form, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness, because that makes up our total body-mind experience. When we really penetrate them, then it leads to the liberation. So we're going to try to get through just 2 more, because each of them have a little bit different. So this time, the Buddha was dwelling in Vesali, and then one person came to him, and there was this monk named Purana Kassapa who believed that there's no cause for anything, and there's no reason why people do evil things. There's no reason why people do good things, and there's no effect of karma. Basically, he didn't believe in karma, and he didn't believe that there's any purification of beings and so on. So this, of course, is one of the wrong views that we discussed, in the previous sutta. We're saying there's no cause or condition for the purification of beings. Beings are purified without cause or condition. And he asked, what does the Blessed One say about this? And so the Buddha tells him, there is a cause and condition for the defilement of beings. Beings are defiled with cause and condition. There is a cause and condition for the purification of beings. Beings are purified with cause and condition. But then that person asked him, but Venerable Sir, what is the cause and condition for the defilement of beings? How is it that beings are defiled with cause and condition? And so this is, again, this is part of this kind of, deductive reasoning of the Buddha. He said, if this form were exclusively suffering, immersed in suffering, steeped in suffering, and if it were not also steeped in pleasure, then there was no pleasure at all connected with the form, people would not like it. People would not become enamored by it. People would not become infatuated with it. People would not have lust for it, want to caress it and pet it and hug it and kiss it and all that. But because form is pleasurable, immersed in pleasure, steeped in pleasure, and it's not only suffering, that's why beings become attached to it. That's why beings become enamored with it. And being enamored with it, they are captivated by it. And being captivated by it, they are defiled by it. That means they would break all the precepts, kill, cheat, lie, steal, rape, pillage, and plunder in order to get a hold of those forms. So this mahali is a cause and condition for the defilement of beings. It is thus that the beings are defiled with cause and condition because of these pleasure. And he says the same thing about feeling. If the feeling were exclusively suffering and had no pleasure, people wouldn't like it. But we have pleasant feelings, so people get attached to pleasant feelings. They have pleasant perceptions, so they get attached to the pleasant perceptions and the pleasant volitional formations and the pleasant consciousness. Maybe they're enamored with themselves. Oh, I'm so good. I'm so smart. I'm so beautiful. I'm this and that. Like, some people we can see and hear about every day on the news, thinking that they're the end-all, be-all of people. So anyway. And what is the cause and condition for the purification of beings? How are beings purified? Because of the suffering inherent in the form, feeling, and perception. And yes, it is pleasurable, but they also understand that it's painful at the same time. So beings, how they see how that pleasure can turn into pain, and that the pain is more painful than the pleasure, and the pain usually lasts longer than the pleasurable feeling. Because you can do something and have a temporary pleasurable feeling, but then you might have painful results of that for a long time. For example, somebody might go and abuse somebody for 5 minutes or take advantage of them, whether it's, and so on, or overindulge in something, or, but then they might suffer for a long time after that. And you have to weigh the advantages. Is it really worth 5 minutes of fleeting pleasure to suffer for hours or days, weeks, months, years, if you happen to, let's say, do a criminal act and get put in prison for a few minutes of pleasure, and so on? So people don't think about that. That's why the Buddha wants us to think about this, so that hopefully it would prevent us from having this strong lust and desire to see the painful and the suffering that comes from that. And again, that's part of the previous talk about seeing the gratification, but the danger and the escape from these forms too. So that is why there's causes and conditions for both the pleasure and the suffering and the defilements that we have, and the purification. And so again, this is part of the investigation. Okay, now in this, there's just one last sutta. And this one especially is about, a monk comes to the Buddha and asks him, how do they contemplate for uprooting and overcoming the tendency for I-making and conceit. So it says the Venerable Radha, one monk, approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, and sat down to one side and said to the Buddha, Venerable Sir, how should one know? How should one see so that in regard to this body with consciousness, and in regard to all external signs, that I-making, mind-making, and the underlying tendency to conceit no longer occur within? So, people have even asked me that, or they ask, how can we get rid of this ego? This I, I can't get rid of it. But these are the Buddha's exact instructions on how to do it. Now we give these instructions a lot, but people don't do it, or they can't at this point anyway, or they try. But anyway, this is the Buddha's instruction. So he's telling you, any kind of form whatsoever, Radha, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, one sees all forms as it really is with correct wisdom thus: this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. And he repeats the same way with any kind of feeling whatsoever, any kind of perception whatsoever, any kind of volitional formation whatsoever, any kind of consciousness whatsoever, whether past, future, present, internal, external, gross or subtle, inferior, superior, all should be regarded as this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself, or I, me, and mine. That this is how we regard everything. We're saying, look at me, look at me, look at me. Give it to me, give it to me, give it to me. I want this, I want that, I'm going here, I'm going there. And this is mine. and holding on, this is mine. So those are the ways that we regard almost everything. And it's so deeply embedded and ingrained in our consciousness that it's not easy to uproot. And that's why these are, the Buddha's instructions that are literally repeated hundreds, if not thousands of times in so many suttas. That is the way that you undermine this this tendency for the conceit, the underlying tendency, and to weaken that, because the sense of I is basically it arises with each moment of consciousness like a shadow, or it's like a parasite that rides along with each moment of consciousness. So we have the idea that I am seeing, tasting, smelling, touching, thinking, deciding to do this, deciding to do that. But we don't understand, we're not really doing that. These are all conditionings. The reason why you just decide to do something because you heard it or you had the idea from some other source. Even the idea of meditating. You heard about meditation. Oh, maybe I'll try that. Okay, it didn't come by yourself. You heard it from somebody else or someplace else or anything else. So that's another way of seeing how, these things are not ourselves, even our mind and our ideas. So actually there's no such thing as an original thought, because every single thing that we may have, think or do is conditioned in one way or another by so many, conditions in the past, in the past karma and so on. And so it takes a very strong, radical and strong medicine to uproot that tendency for the I, I, me, and mind, to wean it off of the consciousness. So when a person has that experience of the Sotapanna, that's the first direct seeing, that you have a moment of consciousness in which that feeling of I or me or dualistic perception is, had temporarily vanished. It is very clear and it's almost shocking, and that's how you overcome your doubts about it. Formerly I was imprisoned by this. I was enamored by it, but now you see it as an illusion. And that's when you start to become disenchanted with it. The dispassion, the disenchantment, the revulsion is only happens when you really get that experience of the stream entry. So in the conclusion of that sutta, when one knows and sees thus, Radha, then in regard to this body with its consciousness, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness, in regard to all external signs, I-making, mind-making, and the underlying tendency to conceit no longer occur within. And with that lecture, this monk, Radha, became an arahant, attained full enlightenment. So now, of course, you can hear that sutta a lot. You may not gain full enlightenment from it, but because this monk probably had already been practicing meditation quite a lot. Maybe he was already a Sotapanna, but so that's why these type of contemplations is again, it's all part of the investigation of Dhamma, and in the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and in developing the 7 factors of enlightenment. These aspects of contemplation are an integrated part of it. And I'm going to be going over the Satipatthana Sutta in our Sutta study class, probably starting next week also. But usually in the popular types of meditation, they don't have you investigate too much. They don't talk much about investigating in terms of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. They assume that it's going to come by itself to you. Well, lots of luck. It may or may not, but kind of we boost it a little bit by developing this first, the intellectual understanding, and then when we meditate, we can reflect on these things, understanding, how did that sound arose? Okay, it touched the eardrum. Then because of my attention, there was hearing. Because, if you're distracted or asleep, even though the sound touches your ear and the sound might be in the room, you may not hear it. And so that sound doesn't arise. Or if the eardrum is, if somebody's deaf, even though there's sound around and attention, you may not hear. Now you might think, well, that's kind of ridiculous, but it's part of understanding that all these things are not self. The ear is not yourself, or the eye, or the hearing. These things arise from causes and conditions. So this is all part, again, of understanding no self. So now let's see if anybody wrote any questions down on the chat list. We might entertain some of these chats. Okay. This question, you mentioned 3 ways to understand the aggregates: mindfulness, intellectual reflection. I didn't get the third one. Actually, I guess you're referring to the 3 levels of understanding. So we understand them through, not mindfulness is not the first one, it's intellectual understanding. So let's say reading these suttas. Let's say you never read these suttas before. So then you get the book and you read these suttas and you say, oh yeah, understand the form, the arising of form, cessation, the way leading to the cessation, and or the Eightfold Path, and you study them intellectually and sort of memorize them, and at least kind of understand how they change. Yeah, this body's subject to change, right? It gets sick. I don't control it. I can't say don't get COVID or so on. If the conditions are there, you might get the virus, right? You can take some precautions, of course, but still people have been getting sick even despite that. So anyway, the intellectual understanding, then the reflective understanding, which includes the practice of mindfulness. By developing mindfulness, you can observe how the mind gets so easily caught up in its attachments and aversions, and how the perceptions and volitional formations are causing suffering and so on. So through meditation, that's the second level of reflection. And then the third one is these insights, especially the insight, the stages of the Magga and Phala, or experience of the really deep, profound experience of no self or emptiness, or even of anicca and dukkha and anatta, that have a powerful effect on you. And this other question, can you describe what are volitional formations? That's a big category, but for one thing, it's like all your urges. You have a desire or the will to do something, and you do it. I want to scratch my head. So it's that desire that causes the arm or the hand to lift up, and you scratch your head. So that's a volitional formation, and it becomes a habit. Or you hear a sound, you turn your head to look, that's a volitional formation. But even your thoughts, or your anger. Let's say somebody says some words to you, and you take offense to that, you get angry. Okay, that's a volitional formation in the mind in terms of a thought or an emotion. And volitional formations are the result of past karma, but they also create new karma. such as, if somebody insulted you, because of your habit of getting angry in the past, the anger comes again. So that's a habit. But then that present anger might cause you to shout some bad words to that person. So that is, you're making more karma at that point. So volitional formations have been caused by past karma, but the volitional formations are also creating the new karma depending on how you are reacting. And that's actually where we can change our karma. If we have mindfulness, we can observe that desire to want to tell a lie or to use bad speech, and then we can reflect on it. No, this urge is going to lead to some unwholesome action or speech, and that'll cause pain to myself or others. So abandon it, to be able to abandon it. So that's how you would apply that. So the volitional formations basically is, it includes all, dream images and, desires, aversions, basically all your thoughts and volitions and so on, as I mentioned. What is the difference between feeling and perception? Perception is the recognition of an object, such as you hear a sound and you kind of identify that sound as being a certain person talking, or you recognize a dog, the form of a dog, and where you recognize that that's different than a form of a cat. So these are the perceptions, the way the mind creates mental images from the objects that we are looking at or hearing or smelling. Like you smell a certain food and you say, oh, that's spaghetti sauce, or that's something else. So it marks out, the perception kind of marks that particular sense stimuli out and marks it separate from other things so you can pick it out. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to pick it out. So, you're looking at the screen, you see that Buddha image, that lion image, that the flowers, that plant. Those are perceptions, and then you might like or dislike. It might cause you a painful or pleasant feeling. That's the feeling that arises. Basically, feeling is connected with like or dislike, but that's because of a feeling. We like pleasurable feelings, and we don't like painful feelings, and we kind of ignore neutral feelings. So the feeling is just that initial reaction of like or dislike, or a painful or pleasant feeling. And then it's liking, the memory of that object comes in, and the perception. And then you think it's the object that you don't like, but actually it's the feeling that the object produces that you don't like. So anyway, again, it takes reflection and meditation through your meditation practice when you develop more mindfulness. And then you can reflect on that in your meditation. You reflect, oh yes, try to identify, oh, that's a feeling, that initial pain in your body that arises, or that urge to itch, that itching sensation, unpleasant feeling. So that's the feeling. And then you identify with it. That feeling is a pain in my knee. That's a perception, identifying this sensation as being on your body. And then the urge to get rid of it is a volitional formation. And then the thought that this is happening to me, that's the consciousness. So that's the way that we try to see these five aggregates. They all arise in each sense experience. And to be able to identify them, this is feeling, this is perception, this is volitional formation, this is ego consciousness. That's very useful. And this is the kind of reflective practice that you can cultivate until it's deeply ingrained. Says, my practice is in very early stages. Is it right view that moving from intellectual understanding to spiritual understanding occurs during meditation? That's right. It's the right view, the intellectual right view gives you the motivation to want to practice. And so the practice is practicing, the Eightfold Path, or practicing mindfulness meditation, practicing, sila, and all these other things. Not only meditation, you have to practice sila too. They're all interconnected. Okay. I used to put the lid on my thoughts during meditation in order to focus on the breath, body. Now when I feel my mind is focused, I allow the mind to follow a Dhamma-related thought as far as it can. This may only last for 5 or 10 minutes before focus is lost and return to the breath. Is this normal? Yes, it's normal. And it's okay to do that. That's right. Because, it's only when this understanding becomes, you get so used to the understanding, whatever you are thinking about in that 5 or 10 minutes, like thinking about karma, thinking about, what is the right view and wrong view, and so on. That you have to think about it many, 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 many times, not just once, not just twice. Because the mind forgets very easily. And this is a new way of thinking. People normally don't think like this. Dhamma goes against the grain of ordinary thinking. That's why you can't just read something once and think you understand it, or hear a Dhamma talk only once, think you understand it. No. You have to reflect on it when you're in a calm state. So that's why ideally we try to, by using the breath in the beginning, and we try to calm our mind down, but certainly not to even the depth of attaining of jhana or anything, just to kind of calm the hindrances down a bit. And then you'll naturally, contemplate, like when you feel a pain. Okay, how is this pain arose? Well, I sat a little bit longer than normal, so the pain's arose. Then you can ask, well, who feels pain? Is this pain really, how does the body arise? It's because of identification. So, I spend, long periods of time cultivating, because the four foundations of mindfulness, most of it is based on that. People have a wrong idea what the four foundations of mindfulness is. They think it's just developing moment-to-moment attention, and okay, that's only part of it. And that's why we want to go over it, the sutta, so you see that the majority of it is about this kind of contemplation. Okay, so and then after that contemplation has become ingrained in the consciousness, you no longer have to contemplate like that. It becomes direct. It becomes automatic knowledge, and that's when you can go deeper than. Because that contemplation takes a little bit away from the concentration, but you're not at that level anyway yet. People meditate like they think they're going to sit down and attain enlightenment in 2 or 3 hours or 2 or 3 weeks. No, you have to set the groundwork, and so on for it. Okay, let me see if there's any more. What is sankhara? Sankhara are the volitional formations. So sankhara is the Pali word for that fourth aggregate of volitional formations that we already had discussed. It's the past habits that we cultivated in the past, and the future habits that we are repeating now, and will become stronger habits again in the future. Again, there's different aspects to it, but that's basically kind of what it is. Okay, that looks like that's about all of the questions. So, we want to still have a meditation practice. So for those who are, listening in from overseas where it's very late in the night, feel free to, leave the meeting and take your rest. And for those who would like to stay for the meditation, then we'll take a 2 or 3 minutes break to use the restroom or just to take a drink of water, and then we'll come back and we'll start with a few stretches that we've normally been doing before the meditation. Okay? So. Okay, friends, just try to sit straight with keeping the spine and the back of the head in a straight line. Just gently close the eyes. And first of all, just feel the weight of the body pressing the floor. Feel where the buttocks and feet press the ground underneath. Feel that earth element, which is the feeling of heaviness, solidness. And feel your hands and fingers touching together. And feel some subtle pulsation or sensation on your hands or fingers. Then gently straighten up the back and the spine. Keep the shoulders back a bit so the upper chest is kind of open. And feel the head balanced on top of the neck. And relax your face muscle. Feel the skin stretched over your skull, face. Feel your lips touching together. Feel the eyes resting in the socket. And the eyelid stretched over the eyeball. You might see some color or patterns or darkness behind the eyes. From that point behind the eyes, you can sort of feel the outline of the sitting body, just the general sense of the buttocks and feet pressing the floor underneath. arms and hands, the sides, in the middle, the head on top. Feeling where the clothing touching the skin on different places. You should be able to kind of just feel all of those sensations kind of in one glance, like you're looking in a mirror. It's the sitting body. Then begin taking some deep, slow breaths. Feel the exaggerated expanding and contracting sensations of your abdomen, rib cage, and upper chest. And hold the air in the lungs a few moments to imagine or feel oxygen in the lungs getting into the bloodstream, going out to all parts of the body, and then feel that relaxing contraction of the out breath. And just take a few more deep, slow breaths like that, thinking like this to yourself. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Now we're going to try to count the breaths again from 1 to 10, to try to get a more precise focus on the breathing. Try to continue to take some slightly deeper breaths to help stay focused. On the next expanding in-breath, mentally count 1. With the contracting out breath, count 1. 1 complete round of breath. With the next expanding in-breath, count 2. Contracting out breath, 2. Expanding in breath, 3. Contracting out breath, 3. In breath, 4. Out breath, 4. In breath, 5. Out breath, 5. In breath, 6. Out breath, 6. In breath, 7. Out breath, 7. In breath, 8. Out breath 8. In breath 9. Out breath 9. In breath 10. Out breath 10. Now discontinue the counting. Discontinue any control of breathing. Just let the breath return to its own rhythm, lesser rhythm, shorter breaths. To continue to feel it, keep the attention focused there in the center of the body, feel the residual, subtle expanding movements of the abdomen, rib cage, chest, however the breath is. Just knowing when the breath is coming in by feeling it. And knowing when the breath is going out by feeling it. Try to notice the brief pauses between the breath. After the in-breath, there's a brief pause, just a fraction of a second or longer. After the out-breath, the brief pause. Just you can make these brief notes to yourself, just breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. Or just simply in, sitting. Out, sitting. Just a continuous present moment of this body, sitting and breathing here and now. It's the connection to the present moment. Try to notice how each breath is different. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's shorter. Sometimes it's an easy breath, sometimes a difficult breath. It's always changing. That's the first aspect of understanding impermanence. Process of continual change in the breathing. The in-breath comes and goes. The out-breath comes and goes. Even while coming and going, it's changing. Try to notice the various subtle, minute sensations of expanding and contracting. Breathing in, pause. Breathing out, pause. This breathing is occurring within this larger body. Within this body, there's those four elements: hardness element, earth element, water element, heat element, wind element. Like where your buttocks or feet press the ground, or the rib cage or the clothing, these are all the earth element rubbing against each other, producing sensation. And the breathing, the movement of the air in and out of the lungs, causing the rib cage to expand and contract. So it's the air element moving in and out of the lung. It's the air element that pushes the earth element of the flesh and rib cage to expand and contract. And all these are producing sensation. And all that is just occurring, happening by itself. Breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. And the form and the feeling are right there together. You can't separate them. This form is all these billions of cells interacting, keeping this body alive. This body lives on nutriment, material food, keep the cells growing, reproducing. allowing it to grow. And these feelings are arising. And you're getting a painful, unpleasant feeling on the body, some pain, pleasant, painful, neutral sensations. If you're feeling sleepy, you can see that this body is not yourself. If it was yourself, you'd say, don't be sleepy. Can you do that? If this body was your own, you could say, don't be painful. That's how you investigate and understand. This body has a life of its own. And so does our mind. You have lots of thoughts going through your mind. You can't concentrate. If it's your mind, you should be able to stay concentrated without thought. Or to be able to think what you want, when you want. If you hear any sounds in your room, notice the mental labels that pop into your mind. Like you're hearing Bhante Rahula's voice. You hear some sound in your house. Even if you identify your body like my arm, my foot, my head, those are perceptions. The mental images produced by the bodily vibration. That's how you investigate. It arises because of contact, because of touching them together. Feeling is produced. And the mind identifies the feeling as being this or that object. And you might like it or dislike it, or move your body is volitional formation, the desire to do something. That's how you examine or identify the aggregate. The form, body, with all of its sensations. Those sensations are either painful, pleasant, or neutral. You like or dislike them, or you identify them as pain in my knee, pain in my shoulder, itch on my head. It's a perception. The urge to move, volitional formation. And the consciousness is the knower. I'm the knower. This is my mind. I'm doing this. I'm meditating. I'm hearing. I'm thinking. The eye consciousness. It's all happening by itself. You don't have to think, what is that sound or what is that body part? It's immediately known in the mind as a perception. Arising because of contact. This is Dhamma Vichaya, investigation of Dhamma. And all these sensations, feelings, perceptions are continually changing. Hundreds of them every minute. Keep coming back to get recentered in the body. If there's too many thoughts, take a few deep, slow breaths to bring the mind back to the present moment, grounded in the body, to relax the thinking process. If the body is slouching, just mindfully straighten back up. Make the mind more bright, alert. If the mind gets calm again, you can investigate, contemplate the Four Noble Truths. This is suffering, means the painful sensation, disappointment, mental problems, physical problems. What is the origin of suffering? Not understanding the true nature of the body and mind, and all the karmic formations of desire, aversion, and habits that you've been repeating your whole life. Maybe like unhealthy habits that's caused suffering, painful results of your unskillful actions, the arising of suffering. The cessation of suffering is giving up those unhealthy habits, training the body and mind, abandoning the unwholesome habits, cultivating the wholesome habits. You can see the suffering gradually reducing in the way leading to the ending of suffering, following the Eightfold Path, right understanding, right thought, right speech, wholesome action, wholesome livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. And coming back to reground, center in the breathing body. Take a few deep breaths, slow the mind down. Come back to the present moment. Sitting, breathing. Sitting, breathing. The skill in meditation is learning how to balance both mindfulness and concentration. Be able to balance calmness and investigation. And observing the breathing for several minutes to calm the mind down. And when the mind is calm, you investigate a little bit. Think about the Dhamma. Not too long. And come back to the breathing again. Get recentered. Focused in the present moment. And when something else happens, to contemplate it. Come back again. Investigating the hindrances, sense desire, ill will, restlessness, doubt, sleepiness. What are the causes, conditions? how they arise, how they cease. Dhamma Vichaya. Now to end this meditation period, we're going to again send out thoughts of friendliness, best wishes toward ourselves and all other beings. So again, let's take a few deep, slow breaths. Hold the air in the lungs for as long as you comfortably can. Feel or imagine that oxygenated blood going in, out to all the cells of the body. Just kind of think of that as being sending metta to the cells of your body. That's what the body is, it's just billions of cells. You live off the oxygen you breathe in. Usually we don't breathe in enough. So just take a few deep, slow breaths, just imagining bathing and flooding the body and cells of the body with rich oxygenated blood, life force. And on the out breath, just imagine the body and mind relaxing. And just think along these lines to yourself. May I be well, peaceful, mindful, and wise. May I be free from excessive attachment and greed, anger and hatred, ignorance, being the causes of suffering. May I have the patience, strength, mindfulness, and wisdom to meet and overcome all difficulties in life. May I continue to deepen my understanding of the Dhamma and to free the mind from confusion and suffering. May I be well, mindful, and wise. And if you can, still take a few more deep, slow breaths and just imagine sending these same thought vibrations out to the whole world. With each out breath, just imagine these metta vibrations. May all beings be free from greed, hatred, and delusion, worry, anxiety, fear. May all beings be well, peaceful, mindful, and wise. May all beings be able to hear the teachings of the Dhamma, to learn and practice meditation, to free the minds from confusion and suffering. May all beings be able to live peacefully and harmoniously together, understanding the ultimate interconnectedness and interdependence of all things. May all beings be well, peaceful, and wise. May all beings be well, peaceful, and wise. Just like a mantra reverberating throughout space. Well, peaceful, and wise. Sabbi sankara anicchati yada panyaya pasati atene bindati dukhi esamaggo visuddhiya. Dukkha pata chani dukkha, bhaya pata chani bhaya, sokha pata chani sokha, hontu sabbi pipanino. May the all conditioned things, the five aggregates of this body, mind, and world are impermanent. When one sees this with the eye of wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with suffering. This is the path to purity. And may the suffering be free from suffering. May the fear struck be free from fear. May the grieving be free from grief. In this way, may all beings live with mindfulness and wisdom. And thus spoke the Buddha. Now take a deep, slow breath. Straighten up the body. Place the hands at the edge of your knees. On the next in breath, stretch your head back while pulling the hands against the knees. Try to arch your lower spine backwards. Hold it a few moments. Then lift the head up, and on an out breath, press the chin to the top of the chest to stretch the neck vertebra. Feel all the sensations. And lift the head up, level on an in breath, and relax on the out breath. Hey, Prashant, can you put the video back on? Okay, friends, so that brings us to the end of our evening sutta study and meditation. And I hope during the next week you can find those discourses, maybe read them over again to reflect on those things. I mean, you think you might understand these things, again, intellectually, that's the first level, but it takes continuous, it takes reflecting on them in meditation over and over again until it sinks in, because a lot of times it doesn't really sink in people's minds, or very superficially, and not enough to be able to actually penetrate down to the unconscious depths to make changes there in the unconscious. So anyway, we should have a